I'd like to welcome you this morning. My name is Joan Ferrini-Mundy. I am the National Science Foundation's Chief Operating Officer, and previously I served as the Assistant Director of the National Science Foundation for Education and Human Resources. And before coming to the National Science Foundation, I was a professor of mathematics and education at Michigan State University. I'd like to welcome you to this fantastic event, to thank you for taking the time to travel, some of you from quite far, to be here with us today for the STEM Education, Learning Disabilities, and the Science of Dyslexia convening. These are topics that are of great interest to me, of course, professionally as a mathematics educator, and I'm very appreciative of the increased focus and the level of excitement that Chairman Lamar Smith and the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee have brought to these research areas through the Research Excellence and Advancement for Dyslexia Act, or the Reid Act. Chairman Smith and Representative Julia Brownlee from California, who co-chair the bipartisan Congressional Dyslexia Caucus, introduced the Reid Act in 2015, and it was signed into law in February of 2016. Research in disabilities education, the early identification of children and students with dyslexia, the professional development for teachers about dyslexia for teachers and for administrators, and curriculum development and evidence-based educational tools for children with dyslexia are critical to advancing our understandings of this important area and are critical to advancing improvements in STEM teaching and learning, which are, of course, of enormous interest to the National Science Foundation. In April of 2016, NSF released a Dear Colleague letter that reaffirmed the agency's commitment to support fundamental research on STEM learning for persons with disabilities, such as dyslexia or autism. And during fiscal years 2016 and 2017, NSF made many funding awards based on the work in dyslexia research, including awards to many of you. So thank you for the great work that you're doing. And this is sort of a who's who for me in terms of the research and scholarly community in this field, and this conference will be an important contribution going forward. The NSF continues to encourage the research community to submit innovative proposals for funding coming to us through the Reid Act. We hope that this conference energizes the community, connects the community with the practitioners and parents and caregivers across our country who are concerned for children and for students with disabilities, students who also have dyslexia. We want to stimulate a substantive dialogue between experts across different fields. The conference offers the opportunity for researchers to integrate findings across areas, consider innovative ideas from across disciplines, and rethink aspects of their own research. Hopefully, the convening provides a catalyst for future multidisciplinary partnerships, collaborations, and work going forward. So with that said, I will introduce Jennifer Brown, who is the Chief of Staff of the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And I would also like to recognize her colleague, Cliff Shannon, who is somewhere here. Cliff, the Staff Director of the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee's Research and Technology Subcommittee. Jennifer Brown will read a welcome message from Chairman Smith. Thank you all again for being here. Enjoy this conference, and please look on this as a first step in a set of collaborations that we hope will continue for years to come. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Joan, and thank you for all of you for being here. As she mentioned, I know many of y'all traveled from Texas, New Jersey, and all over to get together with researchers and folks in the education field and just to collaborate on this important issue. And I'm going to read the letter from Chairman Smith, which he wishes he could be here today. Unfortunately, he cannot, but wanted to send a message to you to thank you for all your hard work. Without all of you working together to make this happen, and especially NSF for putting this conference together, this is just the first step. And y'all making the connections today and the connections that come out of this conference are going to help us on the Hill to figure out how we can be more assistants in schools and in research from here on out. But it's such an exciting day, and I know everyone's so excited to be here, but I hope you will take time to network with each other, because I know a lot of you know each other, but a lot of you are new to meeting each other. And I think the connections is the key, because why reinvent the wheel when a lot of you are doing this, back home, or some people are researchers? It's kind of the gathering of information and making sure that we apply all the good research to schools so children and adults with dyslexia can overcome and find strategies to move on. So thank you very much. And I'm going to read the letter from Chairman Smith. Dr. Gersten Dear Dr. Gersten, greetings to you and all the conference attendees. On behalf of more than 100 members of the bipartisan Congressional Dyslexia Caucus, thank you all for investing your time, talent, and energy on behalf of those who strive to overcome dyslexia and other learning disabilities. Despite the prevalence of dyslexia, many Americans remain undiagnosed, untreated, and silently struggle at school or work. More research is needed to improve early detection, increase teacher training, and give students better access to evidence-based strategies and technologies. That's why I authored the Reid Act, the Research Excellence and Advancement for Dyslexia Act, in July 2015, which was signed into law in February 2016. The Reid Act authorizes merit-reviewed, competitively awarded funding through the National Science Foundation and directs NSF to award not less than $2.5 million per year in dyslexia research grants, plus $2.5 million more per year for other learning disabilities research. The Reid Act will help millions of young Americans achieve their full potential by prioritizing the early identification of youngsters who need help and the development of curricula and other teaching tools to enable teachers and school administrators to intervene successfully. The new law and the useful research that will flow from it is a product of hard work and advocacy by hundreds of students, parents, dyslexia advocates, and educators. Thanks to Director Francis Cordova and the NSF for supporting this important conference. And again, I appreciate your dedicating yourselves to making the future brighter for millions of individuals affected by dyslexia and other learning disabilities. Sincerely, Lamar Smith, Chairman of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. Please use this as a resource if we can ever be of assistance. I do want to thank Cliff Shannon and point him out because him and his subcommittee are the really ones that sat down and worked with a lot of folks to write the Reid Act. So I appreciate all his efforts and his team on the committee too. And here's to a great day, and thank you for all being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and our thanks to Chairman Smith. I would next like to introduce Russell Gersten, who doesn't really need an introduction to this group, and so this will be a brief introduction, but I would also like to very publicly thank Russell for this incredible work with his team in putting together what I hope will be a first-of-a-kind event for us with the National Science Foundation. Russell is with the Instructional Research Group. I got to know him as a colleague when we worked together on the National Math Advisory Panel, and am in awe still of his depth of knowledge, his understanding of multiple research literatures, and his just terrific expertise and great commitment to the fields of educational research. So Russell, thank you for all that you do, and I will introduce you to your group, and let's get on with the day. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to just give a 5-minute sense of our thinking and the thinking behind this meeting, because if you go through the agenda, it's not your typical coherent psychological research, special ed research, LD research. It's a little bit of everything by design. Let me go back for a second. And I want to introduce the conference co-chair, Madhvi Jayanti, who'll stand for a second. And Christopher Tran, who's the administrator for this conference, who I think probably has been in touch with everyone about some aspect or other of this event. Joan mentioned that the goal from the beginning, when I said, what are we doing here, is really to create a research team, a team of researchers or new teams of researchers that are more informed, because there are advances in neuroscience that many intervention researchers aren't aware of, advances in math education that many intervention, special ed, or psych researchers aren't aware of. And so our big goal here is to really encourage new collaborations and exchange of ideas. And so we cut across, at a minimum, the fields I've listed there. And as Joan alluded to, we also felt it was important to have voices of family members to present that perspective, as well as some folks in the school who've organized, and there'll be 2 speakers today and tomorrow, have organized incredibly complex intervention systems in math, often at the K-8 or 5-8 level, which is still a rarity. As you know, many schools are doing things in reading, but much less in math. So the key goal is really dialogue, and I've actually, in the communications with the speakers, encouraged them pretty actively to keep things short and tight, so there really is a chance throughout the day for people to talk, so you're not just sitting and listening to lecture after lecture with 5 or 10 minutes of Q&A. And we also try to set up informal dialogues in two ways. One is something I tried out years ago with an early career researcher group that actually Rob Oxendorf was our program officer for. And we basically had, instead of the typical poster session at a conference where you feel like you're almost like a vendor selling things because people come up and you've just explained the study and 3 minutes later you have to start over. There really will be only 4 per room, and there'll be a fixed rotation. So the idea would be the person would start off by giving an overview of the study. The data would be there, and then people could really discuss that. So we thought that would be really important. And then we also have a social hour with a hosted bar, was able, due to support from NCLD and AIR, we're able to do that. So the types of sessions, keynotes and plenary sessions, no surprise, these are basically the big picture sessions. And again, I've tried to keep them on the shorter side, more like 35 minutes or so, rather than the hour-long thing. So people really cut to the chase in terms of big picture items, and you get a quick, up-to-date sense of various fields. The breakout panels are set up to allow for discussion, and we often have researchers from multiple perspectives, or on some issues like intervention, we have those who do interventions and those who study them. And the poster sessions, which I mentioned, is a bit of an experiment, but quite a few of the researchers were excited about having this opportunity to really be able to discuss their data. And even Michelle Mazzocco mentioned the idea people may have ideas about reanalysis of someone else's data or sharing data and looking for common trends across 2 data sets, and that would be great. This is just a few themes that came up as I communicated with the various speakers. The first one is a deeper understanding of dyslexia, which has been, I assume, a century more or less. People have tried in different ways to understand it, but there's some really important new advances, and it takes a while for them to sink in, let alone what the implications are. The idea of going beyond reading, a specific learning disability in reading and a specific learning disability in math, that there are aspects of reading and math that with dyslexia, with other learning disabilities, people struggle with, and other areas that they don't. And obviously, if we had a better understanding of that, the interventions and instruction could be improved. The evidence of comorbidity, which is not the most upbeat term, but we inherited from medicine, of basically folks who have issues learning much about reading and math versus those with reading only or math only. There's some new insights from neuroscience that we want to share. The neuroscience findings in general are quite new, and we have 2 of the most eminent researchers in this area here. Understanding executive functions and what they may mean for teaching is something that we want to explore both from the more theoretical descriptive research as well as some interesting instructional implications. And they're just advances in intervention research, especially in the math area, incorporating some of the most current thinking from math education. And we have three of the best, I think, thinkers in this area in the room, two of whom will be presenting, and in the area of literacy, going beyond decoding, learning how to read, practicing reading fluently, to really learning how to read and make sense out of textbooks that are essential, be it textbooks, trade books in science and math and the other STEM disciplines. And I think we'll have some interesting insights into that. And this is basically probably the overarching theme. How can we use all this knowledge to inform instruction for this group of students? So that's a quick overview of what we're trying to do. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Robby Cooper, who will introduce our first speaker.